Just as many real-world religions involve beliefs in an afterlife, so too did many religions in the Star Wars galaxy, and religions centered around the Force were no different. Of course, as the Force was a provable phenomenon, the Jedi and the Sith could talk about their afterlife with a greater degree of certainty, and we, in turn, are able to learn about what happens to beings in the Star Wars universe after death in detail. We all know that some Jedi became Force ghosts, for example, but what about the Sith Lords? Could they have become Force ghosts? And if not, what happened to them after death? In this video, we're going to be answering those questions.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Every being in the Star Wars universe had a soul, and all souls in the universe were connected through the living Force. The Force had a will that guided these souls, pushing them to achieve balance within themselves and within the greater galaxy. All souls came from the Force, and when the bodies attached to these souls died, the souls returned to the Force. According to the Jedi, the souls of all beings went to the Netherworld of the Force upon death, an ethereal plane where they would become one with the Force. In the Netherworld, they would become part of the wider Force, with their individual consciousness dissolving into the whole, allowing them to live forever as part of the will of the Force. This was what the last line of the Jedi Code referred to: there is no death, there is the Force. But not all beings heeded the will of the Force in life, and some actively rebelled against it. These beings, of course, were the followers of the dark side, and due to their opposition to the will of the Force, they met a bit of a different fate in the Netherworld than everyone else. They went to a dark place in the Netherworld called Chaos, or Hell, as the Corellians called it. Many beings believed it to be a place of torment, though it's unclear if this was actually the case. Chaos was heavily mythologized by those cultures who believed in it. The Naboo, for example, believed that Chaos was a deep pit barred by 6 gates. Regardless of the actual structure of Chaos, one thing about it is certain: it's where the Sith went when they died. It should be noted that it's possible that beneath all the mythology, Chaos was merely how Darksiders perceived becoming one with the Force. While Lightsiders, who tended to be on the collectivist side of things and spent their lives trying to achieve oneness with the Force, would have seen dissolving into the greater consciousness of the Force as a blessing, Darksiders would have seen it as nightmarish. At its core, the dark side was about the individual, and those who followed it would have seen losing their individuality in the netherworld of the Force as a terrible punishment. In that sense, perspective may have been the only difference between becoming one with the Force and being damned to chaos. But if souls were dissolved into the Force after death, how did Force ghosts work? Now, this is where things get interesting. As we mentioned earlier, all who died in the Star Wars universe technically persisted in the world of the living after death, as they became part of the Force. What made Force ghosts unique wasn't that they allowed the dead to interact with the world, but rather that they allowed the dead to retain their individual consciousness after death. This didn't last forever. Many Jedi who persisted as ghosts faded and became one with the Force after a short while, and those who didn't fade on their own often chose to become one with the Force after a time. There were various ways for Lightsiders to achieve this. Some Jedi learned to sublimate their organic selves to a state of pure energy shortly before death, which made the process of becoming a Force ghost easier. Once, techniques that allowed beings to remain individually conscious after death were widely known among the Jedi, but these teachings were lost during the old Sith Wars, and it wasn't until the Clone Wars that certain Jedi learned them again. It was possible to become a Force ghost without learning some special technique, however. Jedi who died performing selfless acts of sacrifice were also able to persist as Force ghosts, though their bodies didn't usually fade when they died. Additionally, those who were incredibly selfless in general, like Qui-Gon Jinn, persisted as Force ghosts as well. The degree to which these beings were able to manifest their death varied. Generally, only those who had trained themselves to be able to persist as ghosts were fully able to manifest in the physical world, while those who were able to persist because of their selflessness could generally only manifest themselves as voices, not visible apparitions. Here's the thing about Force ghosts though. They were only really available to Jedi. Even if a Darksider were to learn the Jedi techniques to persist individually after death, they still wouldn't be able to do it. This is because no matter what a being knew or did, they could only retain their consciousness in the netherworld of the Force by being selfless in life. The reward of individuality was gained by being willing to lose that individuality, something that no Sith would ever be able to accept. To quote Qui-Gon Jinn, "Eternal life is the ultimate goal of the Sith, yet they can never achieve it. It comes only through the release of the self, not the exaltation of self. It comes through compassion, not greed. Love is the answer to darkness." But as I'm sure many of you are thinking, there were many examples of Sith spirits that appeared after death over the years. Darth Sidious, Marka Ragnos, Ajunta Pal, Darth Andadu, Freeden Nud, and Exar Kun were just a few of the great Dark Lords of the Sith who were able to persist in one form or another after death. As you could probably guess, these weren't actual Force ghosts. But what were they then, and how were they able to exist? Many Darksiders, especially the Sith, were obsessed with living forever in some manner. In fact, the title Darth is believed to derive from the Rakatan phrase Dartar, meaning conqueror of death. It is fitting then that the first known Sith Lord to use the Darth title, Darth Andadu, was also the first Sith Lord to find a dark side method of persisting after death. Darth Andadu pioneered a technique called Transfer Essence, which allowed Sith to cheat death by stealing the bodies of other people. Andadu himself used this technique many times, allowing himself to live for centuries as the self-styled God King of Prakith. Andadu's technique wasn't easy, however. For an essence transfer to work, the practicing Sith Lord's spirit would have to overcome the spirit inhabiting the body they were attempting to take over, a near impossible task that required incredible amounts of willpower. Furthermore, essence transfers caused the practitioner's body to disintegrate, meaning that the practitioner had only one shot at taking another body. If they failed, their spirit would have nowhere to go but chaos. For this reason, Darth Sidious cloned himself for the purposes of essence transfer and used the technique without much trouble many times after the Battle of Endor. Darth Plagueis' technique for cheating death was much more scientific and much less risky, but it wasn't something the user was able to perform on themselves. Plagueis pioneered the technique of midichlorian manipulation, in which a Sith Lord could impose their own will on the midichlorians of another being's body, allowing them to give or take life as they saw fit. This technique could even be used to physically revive the dead, though Plagueis only ever did this in a laboratory setting, and as a result, it's unknown how permanent such revivals were. But when Sith Lords did die and their spirits manifested in the world of the living, it was almost always because of attachment. Some Sith, like Ajunta Pal, Freeden Nud, and Exar Kun, developed strong attachments to powerful objects or places, usually those that were strong in the dark side. This gave them a sort of anchor after death, which allowed their spirits to avoid chaos. However, these Sith specters weren't like true Force ghosts. Sith spirits were trapped by their attachments, and as a result, they were usually unable to leave the general vicinity of whatever they were attached to. These spirits were also terribly impotent, unlike Force ghosts. They had little power of their own, and few of them were even able to speak to living beings. Furthermore, this manner of cheating death made Sith spirits vulnerable, as Force sensitives were actually able to destroy them. Exar Kun did this to the spirit of Freeden Nud, using the dark side to totally annihilate what remained of his consciousness. There was one last way for a Sith Lord to cheat death, however. They could escape from chaos. Powerful Sith Lords were able to retain their individual consciousness in the netherworld of the Force, though they were still trapped and tormented in chaos. If these Sith had living followers who knew the right rituals, their disciples could help them escape chaos and return to the world of the living as a free roaming spirit, one stronger and less restricted than those Sith who persisted through attachment. Marka Ragnos was freed from chaos in this manner, as was Darth Sidious, though both were banished back to chaos by Jedi soon afterward. However, Darth Sidious proved to be so powerful that he could escape chaos as his own, and it was said that the souls of the dead Jedi Masters fought a constant battle to keep him contained in chaos after his final death on Onderon. So that was our look at Star Wars' afterlife and what happened to Sith after death. But what do you think? Would you like to see more videos like these in the future, which cover mystical, Force-related topics? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And just before you click off to those other recommended videos, guys, make sure you check out our new channel called The Braved, where we dive deep into a whole bunch of different eras and find some of the most badass men and women from these eras, and we tell it in a very high quality format, which I'm sure you guys will enjoy. So that's the first link in the description, make sure you check it out. Now, if you're more of a beats type person, then check out our Relax Jack music channel, where we use a lot of the music we post there in the background of the videos we post here on Geetsly's. So if that's your cup of tea, that's in the description below. And if you want to join us on a behind the scenes Discord and get access to some exclusive content, then consider donating to our Patreon. And lastly, if you want to join our wider community, check us out on our main Geetsly's Discord and our Geetsly's Gaming Network, which I'm excited to say is nearly done development, but make sure you join there for any updates. Anyways, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.